Good afternoon everybody, welcome into my craft room and welcome to another Friday craft and chat. Today's theme is all about being inspired by the ocean. It's probably my favourite place to be, whether it's down here where I live. I'm very close to the Solent. I'm very lucky I can actually see the sea from my front garden, although we are a mile or so away from the water. Or whether it's sitting by the ocean somewhere else where I've been on holiday. So that's what's inspired today's projects. Before I do that, I have a few reminders and bits of information for you. I will also warn you that I have the decorators in here at home. I don't think they're going to need me while I'm doing this. They've said they don't think they will, but you never know, do you? So if I get interrupted, my apologies for that. If you're watching, do let me know whether you can hear me okay and if the picture is all right. I'm just going to have a quick look on my iPad and see if I can see myself and see if things look okay there. Let's have a look. There we are. Okay, where am I? And it looks like I'm there, so that is good news. I don't know whether there's anybody there yet or not, so I will just keep talking. The weather has been different this week. When I talked to you last week, I think it was over 40 degrees outside, not far off that in the house, and I could hardly think I was so very hot. This week has been very different. The weather broke a little bit, at least. It's been definitely cooler, and we have had some rain here, not an awful lot. You might have seen on my Facebook page I posted a very brief video a couple of days ago. We had torrential rain outside, which lasted for about half an hour, I suppose. We still need an awful lot more rain for the garden. The lawn is still like dead, excuse me, I've got hiccups, I think, dead straw. I better just have some water. Oh, I hope those don't last. Yes, we could do with some more rain. We did have a little shower this morning, but not very much at all. Now the sun is out. It's beautiful actually outside, sunny, not too hot. There's a breeze. There's some pretty white fluffy clouds in the sky, so, and it's looking good for the weekend. I don't know what your plans are for the weekend. I've got some baking to do and some crafting to do. And I've also got some boring stuff to do, like getting my accounts up to date and that kind of thing. So yes, I must make myself do the boring stuff first and then the fun stuff. So some of you have joined me now, I can see, which is fantastic. Let me know if the sound is okay. So I'm going to start with just a few reminders about things stamping up. First of all, there are 10 days left, that's all, of Celebration. So if there are things that you wanted but you haven't got them yet, then you've still got 10 days to do that. I'm actually putting in an order tomorrow morning, so if there is anything you want, let me know and I will happily add your things to the order. If you can pick them up from me here, then the contribution towards the shipping is just £1.40, so that's a bit of a money saver. And remember, if you spend £45 or more, that's the trigger amount for you to get something for free during the current promotion. I've got some notes here so I don't forget. I've talked to you before about joining my team during Celebration, make some more crafting friends, get a discount on everything you buy, and there are many more benefits. If you join during Celebration, you will also get the Making Plans collection for free. And then you'll also get £31 worth of goodies for free, your choice, and you'll pay £99 to join. That then gets you your first order through your what they call your starter kit of £130 worth, but you only pay £99. So a fantastic deal, always a great deal, especially during Celebration. Let me know if you'd like any more information on that. Today is also the last day to order the Splendid Day Sweet Sampler, and it's also the last day to book the Fancy Fold Cards class running on Monday, September the 19th. That's an in-person class, so you've just got till the end of today for either of those. I've sent out the details of my all-day Christmas class, the Christmas Extravaganza. That's running on Saturday, November the 12th, just near me, just outside Lymington. If you're not on my class mailing list and you would like details of that, then please let me know and I can happily email those out to you. You've got a few weeks to book. Booking closes on September, I think it's the 9th, but into September anyway. And there are a couple of brand new kits which I'm going to show you. I've got some printouts of the images, so I'm going to turn you down to my desk and I will show you those. So bear with me while I cover you over. I've forgotten to put a bit of post-it there, so let's use a bit of washi tape, why not? And just cover over the lens, so hopefully I don't make you feel too sick while I do this. All right, just got to press the buttons so that I'm not upside down, and then turn everything down to my desk. I can see a few people have joined. Let me have a look as well and see who that is. I'm just going to get my cables out of the way, and then I'm going to see who's joined, because I'm sure I saw a couple of comments flash across my iPad screen. So let's just gather these cables together. I wish I had a high-tech way of doing this, but I don't. I just need them out of your way so it's not irritating for you, really. And I'm just going to bring the camera forward a little bit. All right, hopefully that has sorted that lot out. Let me have a look at the comments. Right, where was I? So Mary says hello to everybody. Thank you, Mary, and so does Maureen. So it's lovely to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. All right, so as always, I've got my email and my website down there, just in case you haven't got a note of those at home. And let me show you these two new kits. So they just launched this week. People in other parts of the world have had them a little bit longer than we have, but we've just got them. So the first one is lovely for the summer, and it's a Love This Memory Notebook Kit. So a bit like a mini scrapbook. And the idea is that you've got this little package of things. It packs down into a very small amount of space, and you can take it with you, and you can create a holiday notebook or a travel journal or travel scrapbook, whatever you want to call it. So in your kit, you've got a notebook. The notebook measures 8.5 inches by 5.25. So that's a really good size for travel. It will be quick to complete, and it's not too bulky. And then you've got lots of printed cards. You've got stickers. You've also got letter stickers here. You've got double-sided tape and washi tape, and a stamp set. And this is the images in the stamp set. And a mini ink pad, and I'm just trying to check. Parakeet Party is the ink pad, but of course if you take other bits with you, you could use any colour with your stamps. Loads of images here, some little arrows here. I don't know if you can see on here, but they've done some writing and then they've linked it to a photo with an arrow, so you can print off your photos and add them in. And lots of sets of words. It's a good day, just enjoy, smile every day, beautiful, and then some other little images here which will work for all sorts of things. So that's the first one. That's the Memory Notebook Kit, and that is £24, including a mini ink pad, a low profile clear block, and the stamp set. I wasn't explaining that very well, was I? I'm losing my words today. It's been a busy week. Okay, and then this other one, I know I keep saying I'm not going to mention Christmas until September, but I have a feeling this kit is going to sell really quickly. So this is called All Is Cozy and Bright, and it's a Christmas card kit. You can see here the card front that they have designed. Of course, you can do whatever you like with the bits. You don't have to make all your cards all the same, and you could have your card in landscape or portrait orientation. And the envelopes, let me lift that up, are printed. So the theming is orange slices and spices and greenery and pine cones and berries. So I think that's really, really appealing. The kit will make 12 cards. So they've given you one design, but you can obviously change things around. You have printed card bases, so some of that background detailing is already on your card base. So your cones, your berries, your pine fronds are there, and then you can add more dimensional pieces with the star anise and the cinnamon sticks and the orange slices. You've got some banners to print, to stamp onto, sorry, some dimensional foam pads, some linen thread, and a Poppy Parade mini ink pad, and a block for your stamps. And then these are the stamps that you get, which you're going to be able to bring out every single year and create with for Christmas. So those read: celebrate the season, all is cozy and bright, may this holiday warm your heart, wishing you a Merry Christmas. This one, ready for the groan, orange you glad it's Christmas. Very good. And happy Christmas and a joyous new year. I really love these. I'm adding one of these kits to my order tomorrow because I think they're pretty cards. They're going to be quick to put together, and I always need quick Christmas cards to send out. And I love the stamp set. So that is the All is Cozy and Bright. Did I say to you? Yes, I think I did. That's £22, that one. So all inclusive. And of course you've got your stamps and your ink pad and your block to use afterwards. All right, let me pop those out of the way and talk to you a little bit about what I'm doing today. So I said to you that today was all going to be about ocean themed cards. Now I had a look through my stamp set, and I've got a couple of shelves of stamps. And first of all, I pulled out these, which are real favourites. I love paradise palms. I love to think of being in the tropics somewhere with those beautiful turquoise seas, maybe a few coconut palms, some pretty sunsets. And I also love oceanfront because of the potential for building different scenes with the pieces. But I have used both of these with you very recently, so reluctantly I decided I would set those aside. And instead I'm going to bring out this one, which I haven't used for quite a while, Waves of Inspiration, which has this beautiful wave on it. And I'm also going to use this one, which I did show you a bit of last week, although I don't think, very much stamping from it. This is the Friends I Like Seashells set, and I'm also going to use the dies that coordinate with this. So that's what I thought I would use this week, and I also thought it would be fun to use some techniques with you. So I've got two cards that I'm going to make with you because they're both quite technique heavy, and they'll take a little bit longer than usual, so they're not super quick cards, but sometimes that's a nice thing to do, isn't it? Now I'm just pulling out all my bits and pieces here. Now this first card, the technique I'm going to use for the wave is one which I learned from Rachel Woollard, and it's something I've done ages ago, but then I saw it and saved it a couple of years ago now, I think it was, because I just really loved how she'd got the colour and the texture in the wave. So this is the card I'm going to create. Let me lift it up a little bit to show you. Now this wave is heat embossed in two different colours, and then there is ink sponged onto it. So we've got a couple of techniques happening with that. I'm also going to show you how I made a stencil to stencil the clouds on. So let's get started then. So I have my Waves of Inspiration stamp set, and I'm using the bird, and I'm using the big wave. Now this is a really, really big stamp. I've got it on my F block, but if you've got a Stamparatus, you may well find that that is easier to use with that large stamp. I have two blue inks. I've got Pacific Point and Coastal Cabana. I have my Versamark ink, and I've also got my Whisper White, or Basic White it is now. Mine's back from when it was Whisper White. My craft ink pad anyway, the white one. I'm going to be using a blending brush, a sponge dauber for my white, and my sentiment inside is from Go To Greetings, and I'm using the Happy Birthday. So that's all the bits I've got, along with my heat embossing kit. So I have white heat embossing powder and clear heat embossing powder, and I always put my embossing powders out of the tiny little pots they come in into a bigger box, because it's much easier to access it and to tip it onto my card and then tip it back if I've got a bigger box. So that's how I keep my embossing powders. And because I'm heat embossing, I also have my heat tool here, and I have an embossing buddy. So I will talk a little bit about heat embossing, just in case some of you haven't done it before or haven't done it for a while. And you can find all the bits in the catalogue. So in the annual catalogue, that's the big one, pages 128 and 129. Got the embossing powders are featured here, and the heat tool, and the Versamark ink is over here. We've also got the ink blending brushes there as well. And then in the current mini catalogue, if you have a look on page 49, we've got an embossing additions toolkit. So it's all your accessories. So there's a tray here to catch all your stray embossing powder, an embossing buddy, which you'll see me use in a minute, a brush just to brush away any stray specks of powder, and some silicone tweezers which will hold your card and stop your fingers getting burnt. So that's where to find everything. You just pop those down on the ground, because I know I'm going to end up working in a very, very tiny space here, as I always do. And then I'll be pushing things around my desk, trying to make some room. Right, let's move those ink pads out of the way. All right, so those are the measurements that I'm using. I know lots of you like the measurements. It's really a pretty standard card. I've used half a piece of A4, which I've just trimmed a little bit, just to give me a measurement that's easy to split down the middle to fold in half. So it was 11.5 by 4 inches, and I've scored it at 5 3/4 inches. And my base is Pool Party. On this card, my contrast layer is Coastal Cabana. No, it's not. Sorry, it's Bermuda Bay card. Bermuda Bay, and it's 5.5 inches by 3 3/4 inches. The card I'm going to make for you, I've used Pacific Point instead, just for a change on that one. The layer that I've actually done my stamping on is 5 1/4 by 3 1/2 inches, and my insert is 5 1/2 inches by 3 3/4 inches. And if you didn't see me here last week, then just go back and have a watch of last week's video, because I talk all about layering in that, and why I choose the sizes of layers that I do, why I combine them in the way I do, and there's lots and lots of information there. But that's the measurements that I'm using today. So the first thing I need is my stencil, which I think I've lost in the bucket. There we go. It's see-through, so they are very easy to lose, and actually I haven't done on that what I usually do. Usually when I make a stencil, I put a piece of washi tape on it, just so I can see it more easily on my desk. There we are. So that washi tape is much easier to see than the stencil is. So all I've done for this is I've taken a piece of window sheet, and you can just about see that, but it's a piece of window sheet, and I've used the dies that coordinate with the Waves of Inspiration stamps. So these are called the Waves dies, and in here there are 2 cloud dies, these 2 here, and I've just die cut my window sheet. I die cut the large cloud twice and the small cloud once, and that has given me a stencil. Let me just pop it on a piece of dark card in case that helps you see it a bit better. I think it might. Now I can keep this and use it many times. And you can do this with lots of your dies, make your own stencils. So the first thing I'm going to do is stencil. So I have a piece of Pool Party card here, which is the one I'm going to be working on. I've got my stencil, I've got my sponge dauber, and I have my white craft ink. And I'm just going to create clouds on my work just by deciding where I want them, holding the stencil down firmly. I could put tape around it to hold it, and I'm going to pick up some ink with my dauber and then just pounce the ink through the stencil. So I'm going down and up, down and up, down and up, just repeatedly. And I quite like having a covering of ink which is not 100% even, because I think that makes the clouds look fluffier. You can see how quick this is. Doesn't take long at all. The craft ink is lovely and opaque, so it does work really well on coloured card. Then I just lift that up carefully, and there are my clouds. Now this craft ink takes quite a while to dry. It's a warm day today, so it won't take that long, and you can always take your heat tool to it to speed up the drying process, but I do recommend that you let it dry before you carry on, because it's so easy to smudge that white ink and get white fingerprints, and you'll be upset if you do that. Now here's one I prepared earlier. Some of you will know where that phrase comes from. So I'm going to be working on that one, but I've shown you how to do it, so you know what I did. And my wire has just come unstuck. Let me just tape that back up. Okay, and I'm going to clean off my stencil just by using a baby wipe. If I was near the sink, I could take it to the sink and just wash it off with some warm soapy water, but I'm just going to use a baby wipe for now, just so that I don't end up leaning on that or putting it on top of something and getting that white ink everywhere. There we are. Incidentally, if you're wanting to heat emboss snow scenes in white, that white craft ink is fantastic to use as your stamping ink, which you then put your embossing powder on. It's slow drying, so your embossing powder will stick to it perfectly, and it gives you a really white layer underneath your white embossing powder. So if you're creating snowmen or whatever, it's beautifully white. So I do recommend that for your heat embossing if you're embossing in white. Right, so the next thing I need to do is to stamp my wave and heat emboss it, but before I do that I'm going to bring in my embossing buddy. This is just a little cloth bag with powdered talc in it. Excuse me, coughing. And it will help avoid my fingerprints leaving little marks on here, which then attract the embossing powder. It also damps down any static electricity, and in short it means that the embossing powder will go where I want it to and not where I don't. Alright, so now I'm going to bring in my stamp, and I'm going to ink this with Versamark ink. This is a slow drying ink, and it's glycerin based. It's quite a sticky ink. That's exactly what I want, because I want something that my embossing powder is going to stick to. Once I've heated it, it will stick to the card on its own, but to keep it there while I heat it, I need a slow drying ink. So the white craft ink is brilliant, and Versamark is also fantastic. So I've really given that stamp a good coating of Versamark ink, and because it's so large, I'm actually going to put my card on here rather than lift up the stamp. So the only thing I have to do is just make sure that when I put it down, I don't then move it. There we are. And then I'm just going to rub over that, and actually I'm going to lift up my grid paper, fold it over, hold it in place before I lift up my other hand, and that will help me rub it over and not get any stray bits of ink, because my card is very slightly shorter than my stamp. There we are. So now if I lift that off, because the ink gives you a very slight watermark effect, I think you can probably just about see that wave. Now I've actually stamped it a little bit short here, so I will sort that out in a minute. Sometimes I add a little bit of stamping on there, which I'm quite tempted to do actually. Sometimes I trim the card. Let's try with the stamp, then I can show you what I mean. So I'm going to re-ink the end of the wave. I've got that wave upside down, and I just want the very edge of my card on there. There we go. Yeah, that's done it. Now I'm going to be adding heat embossing powder, and I'm going to be adding ink to this, so it's not perfect stamping, but I think it's going to work just there. Alright, so before my ink dries, I've got a fan on in here so it will dry a little bit quicker than it might otherwise. I'm going to add my embossing powder. I'm going to start with white embossing powder, and I'm going to tip this on just where the wave would be breaking. So if you think about a wave breaking, you've got the crest of the wave here, and that's definitely going to be white water there. And then probably along the top of the wave here, and then there'll be a few bits of spray and foam in other places there. So I haven't covered my whole image in embossing powder. Now some of this will move and stick as I tip it off, but that's okay. If I lift that up and show you, I hope you can see where the embossing powder has stuck. And then I'm going to add my clear embossing powder. What this one will do is it will protect the pool party card that I've stamped on from the ink that I'm going to add in a minute, and so I will have areas of my image which stay the pool party colour. Now I'm going to try and be fairly sparing with this powder, because although I want enough on there to go all over any parts of that Versamark ink that don't have embossing powder on them yet, I'm not actually going to put this powder back into my box, because it will be slightly contaminated, because there is bound to be some of that white powder that comes off, and I really don't want bits of white powder in with my clear embossing powder. So I'm just moving around that powder on my image. I've probably put on a little bit more than I needed to. Just tapping it and moving it so that the whole of the image is covered with the clear embossing powder. And then I'm going to tip off the excess. There's not very much that's come off, and actually just put that straight in my bin. Alright, so the whole of that wave image is now covered in embossing powder of one colour or another, and I'm going to heat it. That will melt the powder, and the white will go much whiter, and the clear will go slightly shiny, and it will also look as if it's pool party, because it will be over the top of the pool party card. So I'm going to heat this just for a few seconds, and then I'm going to start to melt the powder. It'll be a little bit noisy, so apologies for that, but it doesn't last long. If you haven't done heat embossing before, the very best way to melt the powder is to hold the heat tool in one place until you see the powder melt, and then move it to the next section until that melts, and then move on again. It's really tempting to wave the heat tool around as if it was a hairdryer, because that's what it feels like, but don't. You get a much more controlled, better embossed image if you do it just a little bit more systematically like that. If you overheat embossing powder, then it will discolour, and it will also just sink into your card, and you lose that lovely raised image that we all love so much. I'm also going to be very careful, because a heat tool can burn your fingers. Those silicone tweezers I showed you are a really good thing to hold it with, but keep your hands away from the heat source. So here goes. So I'm just letting that heat tool heat up just a little bit. And there's a bit of a shadow, I don't know if you can see, but I've just started. Let me bring in something to point with. Where's my scissors? So this white powder here is now very white, whereas here it's much more yellow. So this has been heated, and here the clear powder has been heated, so it's shiny, and you can also vividly see the pool party card through it. So let me just finish the rest. going to lay that down so that it's, there we are. I don't want that hot nozzle sitting on my desk. So here is my heat embossed wave. So you can see the two colours of embossing. And I'm now going to bring in my ink blending brush and my two ink colours. So I have Coastal Cabana and Pacific Point. So Sandy's here. She says, good morning from sunny and warm Calgary. So yes, Sandy is in Canada at the moment visiting her daughter. Lovely to have you, Sandy. She's going to go through the video in full later. Well, it's lovely that you are here, even if briefly. And I always think it's like a bit of a miracle when somebody joins in and they are actually thousands of miles away. All right, so I've just picked up some of the Coastal Cabana ink on my blending brush. I like to work it on a clear block because that just helps to distribute the ink all around those bristles and helps me avoid having any blobby bits. Although I do still always just test it a little bit on my grid paper just to make sure I don't have any really blobby bits. And now I'm just going to add this ink in a few places. I'm going to come in with another colour in a moment. And I'm trying to stay within my stamped wave, so I'm trying not to go into the sky. And it's just adding some extra depth. I'll lift this up and show you. So you can see here, for instance, that is inked. This is the colour of the card, and that is a darker, more intense colour, and the colours blend really, really beautifully. That's probably enough of that colour. I'm just going to take any remaining parts off, and then I'm going to use the same blending brush with a different blue. I used one brush for all my blues. So this is Pacific Point. It's a bit more of an intense colour, so I'm not picking up too much. I'm blending it in the bristles, and then I'm just going to check that I don't have, there's a little bit of a blob there, look, so it looks like on that section of the bristles I picked up a bit more. So I can just kind of work that off on my paper before I start. So now I'm going to go over some of the places that I've already inked and some new places. So I'm blending it into some of that Coastal Cabana ink, but I'm also adding it in other places on its own. It doesn't really matter if I go slightly over the edges of the wave because, you know, this is the sea and it's in motion all the time. So you do get water all over the place. There. So that's my second colour blended in. So I've actually got four colours here going on. I've got the Pool Party card, and you can see that through the clear embossing. I have the two colours of ink I've just applied, plus the white of the heat embossing. So the final step is to just buff over this because the embossing powder will resist the ink. So as I've been brushing that ink on, if I've gone over the embossing powder, the ink is just sitting on the top of that, and I can now buff it off. So you can see that blue ink was sitting on top of the white powder, and the white powder will brighten. It's really worth doing this final step because the white looks much, much brighter, and also the ink that's sitting on top of the embossing powder won't dry, and so it's likely to transfer to something else, which is not something that you're going to want. There we are. So that is my finished wave. So that has so much more depth to it than just a stamped image would. I really like that. Just going to take the ink off these blocks so again I don't get that transferring to something else. And now I can complete my card. So I have a layer of Pacific Point card here, and I've got a card base here, and pop my insert over there. So let's just layer these together to start with. card always curls just a little bit when you heat it, so I'm just going to make sure it's well pressed down. And I didn't want my border of darker cards to be too heavy, so I've just made it a very narrow border of Pacific Point with the pool party. And I've forgotten to stamp my birds, so let's try and do that without making a mess, shall we, on my finished project. There we go. And I didn't want to put a sentiment on the front, I just wanted the ocean scene to speak for itself, really. Sandy's saying wow. It's a real wow technique, isn't it, Sandy? I'm so grateful to have seen Rachel's fantastic card which showed me how to do this. You could use a similar technique with all kinds of things. I mean, it would work with, you know, flowers and trees. It doesn't have to be the sea. You just change your colours. I think it's wonderful. It is really wow. It doesn't take that long to do, and it just changes the whole look of that wave. So now let's stamp the insert. I'm just going to stay very simple on this and add a couple of gulls up in the corner and a happy birthday. And this is the kind of card that is going to work for pretty much anyone. It would be nice as a thinking of you card, best wishes. It would work as a thank you. Men, women. So yeah, I think it's a good one. Let's just glue that and pop that inside, and then I'll show you the two together, because inevitably, although I've used the same technique and the same stamps, they will look slightly different. And I have changed out the colour of my contrast layer as well, just for a little bit of variation. So that's the one I've just done, and this is the other one. So same technique, the ink blending, the technique's the same, but the colours have gone in different places, so they look a little bit different. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you, Marianne. Yeah, I think it does look like a real wave, doesn't it? It's a really effective technique. So do try that. If you've got embossing things at home, do give it a go. If you haven't, add them to your shopping list. It's really fun to do, and it's not difficult, and you don't have to be super precise with it. You know, it wouldn't have mattered really where I put my inks on there. I could have used different greens and blues. There's a lot of things that you can do to get a lovely result. You don't have to be very, very precise. If your ink goes over the edge of your wave a little bit, that's not really going to matter either, because, you know, the water is blowing, isn't it, when waves are breaking. So just have fun with it. Okay, so I'm going to put those over the back. I feel like I've still got little bits of embossing powder here. Let me brush this off. I've got the fan on, so I think they've been blowing. And I'm just going to get any extra Pacific Point ink off that brush. There we are. All right, so bear with me while I get some bits and pieces out for the second project. So this one is going to be using the Friends Alike Seashells stamp set, and I did also use the Seashells dies. I've used the ones that cut out the stamped shells. So we have the sand dollar, the starfish, and this little shell here. So those are the dies I've used. I'm also going to use some of the masking paper, which I really like. It's so much easier than using post-it notes. And I'm using a card shape that's a little bit different, just for a change. So this is my second card. I'm going to make something similar to that. lots of pieces and parts here. All right. So I wanted to make one of these long cards that would fit in these slimline long envelopes. So that's why I ended up making one this size and shape. I've got a sheet with the measurements on for you in a minute. I've stamped and coloured lots of the shell, starfish and sand dollars, although I'm going to do one of each just to show you what I did now. But die cutting them one at a time is a little bit of a slow process, so I did a lot of them in advance just so it wasn't too boring for you. Somewhere I've got one of these that I haven't coloured. There he is. So I have my 3 stamps that I've already talked about. Ink pads, I have Pool Party, So Saffron, Basic Grey and Smoky Slate. Now the Smoky Slate one is the one that I've stamped my images on, and I've just stamped them on ordinary basic white card. I also have 2 ink blending brushes, one for blues and one for yellows. And I have some Stampin' Blends markers, which is what I've used for my colouring. So I have the Dark and Light Calypso Coral, the Dark and Light Petal Pink, Light Smoky Slate, and I also have the Colour Lifter, and I'll show you what I do with that in a minute. I have some of the masking paper, and I've also got some iridescent pearls. So there we are, that's all the bits. The layers I'm using are these. So my card base was 8 3/4 inches by 7.5 inches, and I've scored that at 3 3/4 inches, which gives me the size that will fit in those envelopes. My contrast card layer is 8.5 inches by 3.5 inches. The layer that I've done the inking on, which I'm calling my beach layer, is 8 3/8 by 3 3/8, and then the insert is 8.5 inches by 3.5 inches. Okay, so Marianne, yes, the clouds were inked on. I made a, oops, let me bring that back. I made a stencil from a piece of window sheet, and I'm trying to find it in my bucket. I just threw it in. There it is. Put that on there and hopefully you can see. So I cut the window sheet using 2 of the clouds. So the dies are in here. They're in the waves dies, which coordinate with the stamp set. So I cut the large one twice and I cut the small one once. And then I just used a sponge dauber and white craft ink and just daubed ink through there to create the clouds. So the white craft ink takes a little while to dry, so just make sure it's dry before you continue with the rest of the card. Hopefully that helps. And thank you, Maureen, I'm glad you like that. And Kay, great, good. So I'm giving you something that you're enjoying. All right, so first of all I'm going to colour these little pieces here. If you need those measurements back, let me know. So the little shell, I've used the Petal Pink blends on. They're very tiny, so there's not a lot of scope for blending, but I've coloured all over using the light one. And actually, when I did the others, I coloured them and then I cut them out, which is easier because you're not trying to keep a tiny piece of card steady. But for this, it was quicker if I cut them in advance. So that's the light one. Then I'm going to add just a little bit of shading, really just around the edges of the shell and across there where that pattern is, using the dark Petal Pink. And then I'm just going to go over the borderline between where the kind of the dark meets the light, with my light marker. So I go light, dark, light, and hopefully you can see, so there is just a little hint of the shading. So I wanted to make the center lighter and the edges darker to try and show that it would be a domed shell. So that's that one. Then this is my starfish. I'm using the Calypso coral markers for this. So I'll start off with the light one. You might have noticed there that I opened them away from me, because just sometimes if they're juicy they spatter ink, and as you may know, it's a permanent ink, so if you get it on your clothes it's not going to come out. So I always open them carefully and away from me, particularly when I'm wearing a white top as I am today, which is not something I usually wear for crafting, but it has shells on it, so it seemed appropriate to wear today. So for this one, I'm just, with quite a light touch, using the dark marker over those markings on the image. So there's kind of the star in the middle, and then there's these little V shapes. And then I'm just going to, with my light marker, just blend over the dark marker using a sort of a circular motion, and that just encourages that dark to blend into the light so that you don't have the harsh outlines. It's my starfish. He will actually go lighter as he dries. Waiting for my iPad to catch up. Yeah, I think you can just about see that. And then finally the sand dollar. We don't have sand dollars quite like this in this country, but I have picked them up off a beach in Florida, which was very exciting. I felt like I was in a book or a film or something picking up sand dollars, because they're not something we have here, but they are very much in the imagery of beaches and so on in those countries. So for this one I did something a little bit different. This is my light smoky slate marker. I first of all just went all the way around the edge, and this is the lightest grey we have, but it's still quite a dark grey. So I wanted to find a way to add some kind of light and dark and some shading that wasn't going to be too harsh. So I tried out using my colour lifter, which you would normally use if you go over the edges. It helps to push the ink back within the outline. But this time I'm just working in a circular motion over the inner edge of that grey line I've drawn with the marker. And what the colour lifter is doing in this marker is basically pure alcohol. So it's just blending into the alcohol ink, which is the grey, and just blurring and softening the edge a little bit. And I'll lift that up and show you. So that gives me a similar kind of look and feel to the other ones. I don't think it's showing on the camera very well, but it is a very soft, irregular outline I have on there now. So those are all my little pieces that I'm going to be adding later. Let's get rid of those markers. So the next thing to do is to create my inked beach here, and for that I'm going to use the masking paper. So this is really like post-it note paper, sticky all over the back, but it's strong, and the glue on it is very strong as well. Now in fact I found the glue on this is so strong that sometimes I can't actually get it off my card without tearing it, so I've got a little bit of a tip for you for that. I think the humidity of where you're working makes quite a big difference as to how sticky this is. When it's humid, this seems to be particularly sticky, and it's pretty humid here today, so I'm going to be quite cautious with this. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to tear some strips, because I want the idea of a kind of a wiggly line going across my card as if the water was coming in over the sand. And this paper actually wants to tear in quite a straight line, so you have to work at it a little bit to get a wiggly line going. So I'm just going to do it little by little, because if I just do it fast it's going to tear beautifully straight, which I don't want. There we are. It doesn't matter how you tear it. Let me put that on something darker so you can see. Like that. And I do want both these torn edges, so I want this one here and I'm going to want that one there as well. So the next thing I'm going to do is peel the backing paper off this. Which reveals the adhesive side. Now, because this is so sticky, if I stick this down here, it's going to pull up the surface of my card when I peel it off. So I need to de-tack this slightly. So I'm just going to press it on my clothes, which you may or may not be able to see on camera. And I reckon about 4 to 5 times. If I can do it, I can do it around my arm so you can see what I'm doing. I'm just sticking it on my clothes and peeling it off. It's not a very good view. I don't think you can see it even then. But there we go. And what that does is that just deposits some of the lint and the bits and pieces from my clothing on the back of this and just takes down the tackiness a little bit while still leaving it sticky enough to stick down. So I've done that about 5 times or so. So I'm now going to think about where I want my dividing line to be on here, and I think I'm going to do it slightly differently to the first one. Let's go across like that. There we are. So this is going to be sand, and the part that's covered up is going to be sea. So I need my sand colour, which is So Saffron, and a block and my yellow blending brush. So where I put down the masking paper is going to protect the card underneath from the ink, and it's also going to give me this nice wiggly line along here. So exactly as before, I pick up some ink, I blend it on the block, just check I haven't got any big blobs, and then I'm going to start with my hand in the air so that my hand is moving when I hit the card. That's a key tip to avoid getting blobby ink, and it really helps it blend much more easily. And then I'm just going round and round and round and round and round, and then when I see that I'm not really laying down any more ink anymore, I'll just pick some more up from my ink pad. Move my hand and come back to where I was. I'm going to be adding shells to this, so it doesn't matter too much if the blending isn't 100% perfect. But I'm just doing my best to get it fairly even. There we are. So that's my sand. Now I'm going to peel off my masking paper, and you can straight away see that wiggly edge. There we are. Now I can keep this and use this again another time. And I'm now going to bring in the other piece. So this is the one that I tore off, and as you can see, it, because it's the negative image, will fit perfectly, because what I need to do is mask off the yellow in order to do the blue. So that's the piece I tore off, and then this is the other part. So I'm going to take off the backing. The backing paper is actually split, and I think I'm not going to take off the other piece. I think that's going to be enough sticky to hold this down. So I'm repeating the pressing it onto my t-shirt a few times, just to make sure that it's not going to pull up the surface of my card. And if I want the blue and the yellow to meet perfectly, when I lay down this masking paper, I need to lay it down and leave, I'll try and show you, the tiniest of yellow borders showing, because you always end up with a little gap in your ink blending when you're using a mask because of the bump in the paper. However, I actually want a little bit of white showing. I don't want it to meet perfectly, because that will look a little bit like the white of the edge of the wave. So I'm going to try and put this as best I can exactly over the yellow ink, which should give me a little bit of a white gap. There we are. So I've covered over the yellow, so I'm not going to get blue onto my yellow. And then I'm bringing in my Pool Party ink and my blue blending brush, and I'm going to do exactly what I've just done with the yellow, but with a different colour. I'm just going to turn this round so it's a little bit easier for my right-handedness. So move my hand and then come down and make contact with the card. And just blend and blend and blend and blend and blend. And I've got a few slightly uneven areas. I mean, I can live with that, but I will just concentrate on them a little bit more, just help to blend all the ink in. There we are. Okay, my favourite bit is taking the mask off. There we are. And again, I can keep that for another time. And if I lift this up, you can see that I have got some little white gaps, which is what I wanted here. And so that's because I had the mask exactly along the edge of the yellow. So if I didn't want the white, I needed to pull the mask back and expose a tiny little bit of that yellow. But if you put the mask exactly along the edge, then you get these little white bits where the brush has kind of bumped over onto that uneven layer. So that is my beach created. Really quick, not difficult, and very easy thanks to that masking paper. So now I'm going to stamp a happy birthday. I'm using exactly the same happy birthday as before from Go To Greetings, one of my most used sets. Just make sure I've got everything straight. And that's basic grey ink that I've used there. And then I just need to decide where I want all my little pieces. So I'm just going to lay them down and then move them . Something like that. You can't do it wrong. It's just just what looks right to your eyes. I usually try and have an odd number of pieces when I do this. So I'm now going to curl them using my bone folder just to give them a little bit of dimension, and I am going to attach them using foam pads, the stamping dimensionals. So this is just as if you were curling ribbon, and that one in particular, that's got a really nice curl to him, that starfish. Hoping that will show. So when he's stuck down, he will kind of curl around the dimensional and just adds a little bit more interest than gluing everything completely flat. So I've still got some of these left over, which is good. I can make some more cards with them. There we are. Now I need my foam pads. I think my sand dollar is going to go down first. And my starfish. And I need some more foam pads. What have I got? I've got one more on there. Let's use that one. I save the edge pieces for when I want longer strips. Need to decide what angle I want that one at. Something like that. So I'm mostly having these little pieces touching each other in their little groupings because it just somehow is more pleasing to my eye than if I had them all spaced out. I mean, that one isn't, that one's on his own, but generally just in little clusters I feel looks a little bit more, I don't know, more realistic. So this time my layer is Pacific Point. And my card base is So Saffron, and I'll show you the original one in a minute so that you can see the effect of the different card bases. Actually my layer is the same on both of them, it's just the card base that I had varied. I think I like this one with the yellow card base better. Okay, so I used the opal rounds on the first card I showed you. On this one I'm going to use the iridescent pearls, which are my current favourite embellishment. So I'm just going to scatter a few of these around. That's a little one. And a little one there. And then I'm going to stamp my insert and then I will show you everything close up. Can't remember, what did I do? What did I do inside? Ah, bit of stamping. So let's find my happy birthday. That's going to go there, and then pull out my smoky slate ink pad, and I'm just going to stamp some of these in the corners. Oh, and actually before I put that away, let me just stamp my envelope as well. Okay. I really like this card. I think the colours are pretty. It makes me think of all the happy hours I've spent on the beach, walking along, paddling in the rock pools, picking up treasures to take home. And we have a lot of summer birthdays in my family, so it's always good to have birthday cards that seem appropriate for the season. Alright, so let me hold that up for you to see. I'm hoping this wire's not too annoying. It fell down again and I just kept going this time. Oh, you can't see that. Let's move it down. There we are. It's quite hard to get under there all at once. Let me bring back the first one I showed you. So they're the same but different. I obviously went a bit more intense with my ink on this one, and I've changed the angle of the beach, and because the beach is different, I've put the shells on in different places as well. So the same card but different. And then if I move that one out of the way and bring back this one, which was the other card I did, let's put them that way around. That's better, isn't it? Small one at the top. That is today's 2 projects. So it has been so nice to spend time with you today. Thank you very much for hanging out with me while we crafted. If you're watching this on the replay, you are equally welcome, and I thank you as well. It really helps me get seen by other people if you can like and share this if you're on Facebook, and if you can like it on YouTube if you're watching the recording on YouTube. And if you do like what I do, then do subscribe, and that way you will get notified every time there is a new video. And in the meantime, I'm just going to turn the camera back up and say my goodbyes to you, because it's gone 3 o'clock. So I think it's time we did something else. There we go. I'm sure you've got a list of things to do. I always have a list of things to do on a Friday. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you'll be back next week at 2 o'clock on Friday. Next week I'm going to be creating with 2-step stamping. So that's those stamp sets where you have 2 images that you stamp one on top of another to get all sorts of interesting effects. So I will look forward to seeing you then. I hope you have a great weekend, and thanks for joining me. Bye bye.